everybody, my name is Kara Brown. I am an urban fantasy author and a writer for Otherworld Inc. and 3/5 Press, and I'm here to answer a question that many of you have been asking, and that is, what the fuck is going on with my board? To answer your question, I decided to try a writing prompt that I found on Etsy, and I actually really enjoyed it to the point where I wanted to do a video about it. I'm going to go a little bit more into it, but basically the way that it worked is that you use this template, which I will link down below, to kind of plot out the story that you're doing. And I thought that was just a really fun writing prompt, and I wanted to share that journey with you and see if maybe that was something that you were interested in. So just a quick few things I want to cover before I dive into this. I was really sick this week, so if I, in the video, look like I'm in various stages of death, that's why. I feel a lot better now. Thank you for the concern. The other thing is I want to actually talk about tarot cards in general before I dive into this, because I know a lot of you are going to have questions and I just want to get them out of the way now. First things first, I am not a professional card reader. I have no ambition to be a professional card reader. My interest in the cards is purely from an artistic and kind of like a historical standpoint. I've always really enjoyed the symbology and the art that's usually depicted into these cards, and that's my big interest in them. I don't use these for divination. I don't use these to see into the future. I do know a lot about the people who do that. If that's something that you're interested in, you would like me to dive into that aspect of New Age pagan culture, I can definitely do that for you. I'm definitely in the heart of it. But like I said, I am not a reader. Please don't ask me for a reading. If you would like me to talk about like different cards, I do collect them. It's my collector thing. Some people like to knit, some people like to do puzzles. I like to collect tarot cards and play with them. That's pretty much what I do. And the big reason I want to say that is because usually when I talk to somebody, I'm kind of hesitant to mention my interest in tarot cards, because when you tell somebody that you're interested, you get three reactions. You get, oh yeah, psychic, why don't you do me a reading, psychic? And then you get kind of like, I've always wanted to have a reading. Will you do a reading for me? And I never believed in that stuff, but I guess you can do a reading. We'll see how it goes. If you can tell, like usually all these options end in a reading, and I'm not going to do that. So this is purely for entertainment purposes. If you like it, you know, feel free to buy a copy of your own. Like I said, there's a link down below. I'd like to support this person. I thought it was a really creative idea that they came up with, and let's just go ahead and dive into this. It's day 9 of like Camp NaNoWriMo, and I should be working on my 10K Tuesday right now. But something happened and I got distracted, and then distraction leads to more distraction. Next thing you know, I found myself on Etsy looking at something, and I looked at it and I was like, this could be a really fun thing to do. And I came across this worksheet. So it's a worksheet for writers. It's basically a worksheet about writing a story based off of the tarot cards that you pull, and I was just so enamored with that. I was like, I have to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this board that I never know what to do with. Sometimes it's my planning board, sometimes it's my goal board, it's my whatever board. And I'm going to use it to actually plan out the story. Now I'm not going to write it this month because it's Camp NaNoWriMo. I have other projects that I need to be working on, but at some point I kind of want to see what happens with this, and I want to start it. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting things up, and then you guys can watch my progress as I do this. Hello, it is me on day 2 of doing all these video recordings for you. So I was trying to figure out the best way to kind of explain everything that's going on here on the board, and I realized that in order to explain everything, I kind of had to explain the tarot process itself just a little bit. Now, I'm not going to dive into all the cards because that would be a very long video, and that's not what I'm really here to do. But I am going to explain a couple of basics, and then I'm also going to explain the cards that are here on the board. Now, the cards that you see up here on the board, in case you were wondering, are part of the Shadowscape deck. Shadowscape is a very beautiful deck. They're all watercolor. They're just absolutely gorgeous. However, I am not going to go and grab all the cards and then show them to you for 2 reasons. One, it took me a lot of time to put all the cards up there. It's going to take me more time to take them down and put them back up. I'm lazy. I don't want to do it. The other reason is because as beautiful as this deck is, and as graceful as this line art is and everything else, this is not the easiest deck to understand. It is not a beginner-friendly deck. So for the purpose of kind of explaining the meanings and the symbolisms behind these cards, I'm actually going to use the manga deck. The manga deck is one of the more user-friendly ones. It's got vibrant colors. The symbolism makes a lot more sense, at least from a beginner standpoint. Now, if you're somebody who has been doing tarot for a very long time, you probably won't have a problem using these cards, but if you are new, this is one of the decks that I would recommend right off the bat. And then, for the sake of transparency, when I struggle with trying to understand certain meanings of cards or their symbolisms or their backgrounds, I usually refer to these 3 books that are right here. Because these are the ones that I actually am used to the most. The Shadowscape one here on the top is obviously here because those are the cards that I use, so sometimes if what I'm seeing in these 2 books right here don't make a lot of sense, I'll go and see what the author of the deck had to say about it as well, so that way it makes that way it's more least I can understand the intent behind the symbolism that's in the card. If you are new, I'm just saying, like, if you are new, I have to say Kitchen Table is probably one of the easier to read and digest books when it comes to understanding tarot. Very practical person, very down to earth. It's not like a lot of like cleansing energy stuff. It's just kind of like, here are the facts, and it's so easy to understand. So let's dive straight into the basics of a couple of things about tarot. Again, I am not a professional tarot card reader. I just really like tarot cards. I like the symbolism, blah, 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 blah. I've already given you this disclaimer. I'm just reiterating that I am not a specialist. This is just a really good hobby for me that I enjoy doing. Anyway, there are 78 cards in a tarot card deck at any given time. There should usually be there. Now and then you'll encounter like an author or an artist that wants to add in an additional card or two, but traditionally it's 78 cards. These 78 cards are broken into two kinds of cards. They are broken into the major and they are broken into the minor. Major cards are usually indicated because they will have a number here and a name down here. Typically when you have a card like this, you're going to pay a little bit more attention to it because there's a lot more symbolism, a lot more background that has to go with it. And these cards are supposed to tell you a story. They're supposed to explain a situation and kind of shed light onto what is going on. Minor arcana typically belong to another set. So here you'll see cups. There are cups, pentacles, swords, and then rods or staffs, however you want to do that. And each one of those cards has an element, which I'm going to dive into in a minute. But before we do that, I just want to explain a couple things about cards in general. Now, one thing I definitely want to kind of make clear here is that there are no bad cards in tarot. Every reader, at least the ones that I've encountered over the last 10 years, they'll always have a card that they're kind of apprehensive about. They see it in the reading, they don't have a good association with it, so when they see it, it's bad news. An example that I will give you is that I am not a fan of the Tower card. I am not a fan of this card at all. Usually for me, when I see this, it means that chaos is coming, turmoil, sharp chaos, it's going to happen. Now, one of my friends who does this professionally says that this is the rebuilding card. You know, bad things have happened and now it's time to rebuild. So that's two different perspectives on this situation itself. One card that I'm particularly fond of is actually the Hermit card. I mean, I stay in the house all day, right? But I really like this card. However, when one of my friends sees this card, they don't have a good association with it because they say that the Hermit is alone and isolism is bad and so on and so forth. So when it comes to cards and readings, you will find that everybody has a very different take on how this works. So for those of you who are watching me and you're going to see me go over these cards, don't be surprised if I have a different interpretation of the cards than you do. Again, it just depends on how we decide to view these things. But anyway, let's move on to this to the quartz real quick. So the quartz they're 4 quartz, and let's go ahead and start with the one that I'm not particularly fond of, and that's the cups. Cups are your water element cards. They are your emotion cards, your empathy cards. The only reason I'm not a big fan of this is because when I see one cup card, I'll see like a whole bunch of more, which tells me that I'm dealing with a very emotional situation, and I'm not a very big emotional person, so this kind of like makes me uncomfortable when there's a lot of them being laid out for one reason or another. But what I will say is if you do get a reading and you find that there are not a lot of water cards in your reading and you're dealing with a tough situation, you're probably dealing with a lack of empathy that is happening in your situation. But again, that depends on who's doing your reading. The next one is going to be the Pentacle card. Pentacle card is kind of like more of like your material card, your items, your health, things that you can physically, grasp onto: money, wealth, career, as I said earlier, health. This is represented by the element of earth, so you will find a lot of either ground or fruit or trees, whatever, whenever you look at these. So the next one is going to be rods or wands or staffs. It really depends on who's making the deck. Usually these are depicted as wands, but they are your fire elemental. These are your fiery people. This represents a lot of passion, a lot of emotional drive. It's a very fun court to eyeball. Last but not least is my particular favorite court, which is swords. Swords is represented by an air element, and it's also a big depiction on health and mentality, and along with motivation. The reason I am a fan of this deck isn't because the art is cool, but it is. But it's because this is of all the courts and all the cards, this is definitely like the Game of Thrones part of the deck. This is where either really good stuff happens or really bad stuff happens. Like it's a very harsh reality. I usually like to refer to this as the life is happening part of the tarot deck. Now, one thing I do want to touch on before I go any further is that there are 2 ways to read cards. You have your regular side and you have your inverted side. And typically what this means is that if the card's inverted, it's supposed to have the opposite application meant to it. I did not do that for the purpose of this exercise. That's just, it just didn't feel right at the time. I mean, it's supposed to be fun. But for example, this is the Fool. He's the 0 card. He's supposed to be somebody that's bounding off into adventure, and he's kind of oblivious to some of the consequences of the actions, but not like in a careless way. Versus Upside Down, where this is somebody that is literally oblivious to everything that's going on, and you probably don't want them near a socket. Oh my god, I have to sort these. Man, I really do like this stuff. It's such a good stuff. You know, while I am going through these cards, I do want to talk about this a little bit because, so like I said, I'm an avid fan of these cards and the history behind them and everything else like that. Having said that, I have definitely met some charlatans when it comes to tarot card readings, and there are definitely people who will look to take advantage of you when it comes to these readings. And if you are inspired after seeing this to go and see somebody just to see what they have to say, I would just be very careful about who you go to. Here's the story. I don't really do readings. I don't, just because I've encountered way too many charlatans in order for me to like actually take it seriously, if that makes any sense at all. And the example I'm referring to is that one of my friends who was a big practitioner at the time, they've since become Catholic, which you will find happens very often in the pagan community. They're either Catholic or they go pagan or they go back and forth. And I went to the store where they were getting the reading, and they had stepped out to go get something to eat, and I was sitting in the store, and there was like a little closed off booth, and this person was getting their reading done. I was listening to it, and I was like, that was a really interesting reading. I don't really, and that was my thought. Friend comes back, they've already eaten, and I'm still sitting there reading the book that I had picked up. And so my friend went in there and did her reading, and it was the exact same reading that the person who had come in before had gotten, and I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? So I'll probably do a video later if you guys are really interested about the things to look out for when it comes to tarot card readers. Just because I'm not a fan. A lot of times when people are coming to do readings, they are they're at a crossroads, they are vulnerable, they need some kind of guidance, and these are just people looking to take advantage and take money. Not a big fan of that. If you've been a fan of my channel, you've probably heard that before. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you would like me to do a video like that. I'm actually game to do that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to talk about the characters that are in the story. This is the top row right here, so I'm just going to start one way and then go the other way. So the first character that I pulled has the card of the Tower that represents them. I mentioned this card a little earlier before. I'll talk about it again. The Tower is basically things are happening and they're not happening in a desirable way. Sometimes, of all the cards that I probably have a negative association with, this is the card. Normally in cards you'll see that there are actually storm clouds overhead. It's not good. There's fire everywhere. Bad times bears just happening everywhere in this card. This one's a little more jolly. There ain't no fire going on in here. A minor critique of the card itself. And you have these two people that are kind of like, they're falling but reaching for each other. It's very, very interesting. So what's happening with the character in this story so far is that they were having a very normal life, and then something horrible happened, and it's basically upended their entire world. Which is, when you think about story format, that's pretty appropriate. Now, for our antagonist, I pulled a very interesting card. I pulled the Seven of Pentacles. Now, Seven of Pentacles is kind of seeing fruits of labor card. So whoever this person is somebody who has been working for a very long time, and they're about to see all their plans and their efforts come into fruit, so to speak. This person is going to be more than likely well planned. They've been doing this for a long time, and they're about to achieve everything that they're trying to do. So upending that is not going to go well. This second card represents the person who is supposed to be the foil character, but at this point, since I finished planning all this out, I realized that there are going to be two main characters, and this is the second main character. And this character is represented by the Three of Swords. Very, very sad card when I usually see it. This is a card that usually represents that somebody is in a lot of pain, they are suffering, they are still in the midst of recovering from trauma that has happened to them. And if you guys take a look in here, remember earlier when I said that the water is based on an emotion, there is rain falling, even though that this is an air card, which means that there is a lot of emotions still occurring within this individual. So whoever this person is, they are suffering and they're just trying to get by, and it's just very hard for them to move on with their daily life. So I'm so sorry. Now, so this next card represents the person that is working with the antagonist, and it's a very interesting card. It is also a pentacle. I totally shuffled all of these, I swear. Now, one thing that I am probably going to critique this deck out a little bit is that normally with knights, knights are, they have their horse and they're in a state of movement, except for the knight of coins or pentacles in this situation. In fact, one of the defining characteristics that usually comes with this card is that the horse is not mobile at all, and the knight is actually looking off into the distance with a contemplative expression. That is meant to represent that this person is a thinker. They do not act without thinking or taking appropriate measures. This is your calculated person, and when they decide that they are going to take action, they will take some serious action. You are screwed. So the last card that I pulled is supposed to be for the supporting character according to the worksheet that I used, but after I pulled it and then pulled all the other cards, I came to realize that this character isn't just the supporting character. This is a catalyst character, kind of like Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings, if that makes any sense. And so the card I pulled is the Temperance card. The Temperance card has a lot of symbolism that goes on with it. This is supposed to be a person that's between two worlds, trying to do balance. They are very mythical. There is water going on. And they're all about trying to achieve some sort of balance that is going on. Now, again, there is water going on here, and I want to talk about that a little bit because depending on what deck that you're using or what particular faith that you were following, water is also a symbol for the other world or the way to get into the other world. It's your magic, it's your intuition, it's not just your feelings, it's like the magic that's all around you in a kind of way. So I picked up on that when I looked at this deck, and I realized that whoever this person is going to be somebody that is trying to unite two worlds together by any means necessary, but they're going to do it in a very graceful way. This person's also going to be very empathetic to what's going on around them, by the time I got done looking at this card, I realized that there was just going to be magic and fantasy in this story, so I'm totally down with that. I like fantasy and magic. So I kind of did two other worksheets. I kind of did this one that explains like the overall idea of what's going on in the story, and then I did like a more detailed hero's journey. And it's kind of like they do overlap pretty well. Anyway, let's just go ahead and we'll start with the pyramid one, and then I'll move over to the circle one. Okay, so we will start with the first one for the protagonist, the state of the protagonist. In this case, I have two protagonists, so we're gonna wing it, alright? The first card that I pulled is actually the Three of Wands. The Three of Wands, again, that's a fire sign, but this card particularly represents somebody who is watching and waiting, and they are about to embark out on a journey. They are going somewhere, things are about to happen. I want to say that this is kind of a representation of the calm, ordinary world at the time before basically like the tower happens to them. The second card is the inciting incident. It's the thing that happens, and I think it's very appropriate. That is the Chariot that shows up for this. The Chariot, it's depicted a little bit differently. Normally in the Chariot card, the reins are not being held by the person who is driving it. The Chariot drives itself, but this is a determination card. This is things have to get done at any cost. It's determination. It's a very fixed card. So the thing that happens isn't, it's very sudden, it's very quick like the tower is saying, but this thing that's happening is just something that has to happen. It needs to be done at all costs, no matter what. Actually, I'm looking at it. It also means a journey, so whatever is going to happen, they're going to go out on a journey. So considering that this is the pre-journey card, the going on the journey makes a lot of sense. It also, this person, if you take a look in the card in particular, has a scepter. It means that they are their own master. They do not obey the whim of another. This is usually the card that I would associate with somebody who likes to be their own boss. So while this is happening, it's not being done under the guise or the order of another person. It's being done by the directive of the two characters themselves. So this next card, which has to do with the goal, is interesting because it's the Justice card. It's basically having the balance in two worlds brought together, which if you guys remember earlier when I was talking about the supporting character, the Temperance card, who is trying to bring two worlds together, you'll see that they have some similarities going on here as well. They're balancing some things. They're technically blind. One is voluntary, the other one is just doing it in all rights of fairness. But the goal in this story is going to be bringing two things together. And it has to be done at all costs if we are following the pattern of the cards that we've been reading so far. So I'm going to kind of like derail from this conversation a little bit because I want to talk about the differences in when you're working with various decks and the art and the symbolism that's in there. But for the thing that's getting in the way of what's going on, I pulled the Knight of Swords. And I'm not trying to diss this deck or anything. It's a really beautiful deck. My problem with this particular card is that it is not depicting the actual symbolism that's supposed to be associated with the knight. For example, I went and I pulled from a Celtic deck. They call it a prince. I went and pulled the Prince of Swords, and as you can see, he's on a horse. He's charging into battle. The sword is upright. Come at me, bro. Right? This is the I'm coming for you. You can't stop me card. Versus this guy. He's sitting on his horse. Oh, sorry. Versus this guy. He's sitting on his horse. He's looking super cool. But you can't tell that he's charging or he's in a state of motion, which is usually what's supposed to be seen with these cards. Now, this is definitely like the we're doing this right now card. So the thing that's getting in the way of the heroes at this point is something that is going to be very aggressively trying to stop them. Good luck. So this next card, according to the worksheet, has to do with the villain, the hinderer. And I pulled the Hierophant for that. Very, very mixed thoughts on this card. But so in the pictures that are usually of this individual, it's somebody that is kind of like, it's a priest, it's somebody that interprets like sacred texts, it's a knower of ancient knowledge, it's a religious kind of person, but it's not just a regular priest, like we're talking like at the top of the hierarchy kind of thing. I've heard that sometimes this card can also be reflective of, I want to say like a trickster person, but I've never gotten the feel or that impression from this card. This has always been somebody who has access to sacred knowledge and will interpret it to the people as it needs to be interpreted. So in the case of the story, this is somebody who knows things. You're right, we're talking about the person that's hindering everything that's going on. They know things and they're only giving out the information in the way that they want it to be perceived, but because they're the authority on it, nobody's going to question them about it. So the person that is in the way, who has been working a very long time, let me find it again, who has been working a very long time to bring fruits of labor to fruition, is somebody that has access to knowledge and they're only sharing it in the way that they want it to be shared. So there's supposed to be like two kind of villains or two kind of villain situations that are going on according to the template, and the other card I pulled has to do with the moon. The moon is a major arcana card. It has to do with, I've always interpreted the symbolism in this card to be like kind of the two things. I've interpreted it to be two things. One, there's a lot of water in this card, like a lot. And so there's a lot of emotions that are going on. There's a lot of mysticism that's going on in this card, but there's the moon, and normally you'll see like there are two animals happening in the background as well. And if you know anything about the moon affects the tides. The moon causes weird mood swings in people and animals, and so it's kind of like a weird, I want to say like it's an eve of disaster thing. Like things are coming and it's going to affect everything. So in this situation, I would say that this card isn't a person. This card is an event. Something is going on. It's like on the eve of disaster. This is probably like the dark moment of the story. Like it's all gone horribly wrong and it's about to keep going wrong unless something happens to stop it. Now this card right here has to do with the character arc. Has to do with the lesson that the characters learned, what they came to acknowledge. And for that one, I pulled the Queen of Coins. So again, remember that I said that that the coins have to do with kind of like an earth-based, almost tradition. Queens are very interesting. Queens are, I wanted to say, like the softer side of a court. This is your empathy, your motherly urges, your caregiver, your empathy. But when I look at this card, I actually don't like the interpretation of this card. Let me find you a different one. Okay, I went back through the deck, the Celtic deck, and I found her. And just to be clear, the whole reason I'm not just focusing mostly on using this deck is because there's a lot of nudity in it, and I don't want to get banned. But this card's safe. So this is kind of like, this is definitely like a mother figure. They're lounged in their chair. I don't like this card at all. I know I said I wasn't going to take any of the cards down, but like I went through all of them and I was like, none of these are showing what I need them to show you guys. If you guys take a look here, this is the Queen of Pentacles, and she is pretty much embedded in this tree. Like, you don't get more in touch with nature than being part of a tree, right? This person is a motherly figure. They are new growth. They are so many different things. They're also kind of like a warmth. Like this, like if I had to put this as a person, this is kind of like the nice mom who would bake cookies and just make you feel part of the family. Like, this is the person that this card represents. However, this isn't a person card. This is kind of, again, this is supposed to be the lesson that these characters are learning. And the mother is, or I call it the mother card. The Queen of Pentacles card, the mother card, the hearth card, the home card, also represents, in my opinion, the balance between self and work. You know, like this is like the self-care. Like this is the card that if you need to take care of yourself and you need to make sure that you are like good emotionally and mentally, this would be the card for that. So the card is saying that the character arc that needs to go on with these two characters is that they need to cater to their hearts. Like, they need to take care of themselves. It's a romance. I've now pulled the romance card. So I guess the characters would just be allowed to love each other. I'll work on that. So the last card is the outcome, or the kind of like the final image card. And what better card to have when you're trying to bring two worlds together and making it finally happen than to make sure that you protect those two worlds. So this is usually when you see something it comes in twos, that's a symbol of balance, yin yang. The infinity symbol is usually seen with the pentacle ones. But this card is kind of protecting something and making sure that you ensure the balance of it and basically sticking to it. Like this is, I mean, not super sure how I feel about all the symbolism in here, because there's a lot of water that's in here as well. This person's alone, so they are doing things alone. But I don't, looking at it. But this person does have a peaceful expression as well. So this is somebody who wants to, I don't know. And then there's the moon in here too. What is going on in this card? And so we have the moon, we have water, we have the Two of Swords, we have a person walking with their eyes closed. It looks like they're guarding something, but you can't. Oh, you know, maybe they're just protecting the new. Okay, so this card, you will have moments if you decide to pick this up as a hobby where you will look at your cards and they don't make any damn sense to you. That's totally normal. Don't feel bad about it. Okay, so I'm actually just going to grab 3 cards and look at them together because I think that's going to make this more sense. I pulled these cards, but I didn't go through and interpret them all on the spot, and I think after this one I'm going to take a break because this does take a lot of willpower. I'll show that one. So again, for the outcome resolution, I pulled the Two of Swords. So the Two of Swords usually has to do with protecting something. It also has to do with two paths coming together. But let me see. In a lot of the situations, what is happening here? These are just two worlds coming together. That's all I can really say. These are two worlds finally coming together. And they've done it blindly. That's what I'm getting right now. They've gone into this, they're doing it blindly, and they don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's going to be a great way to end a story. Just want to state again that a lot of this is obviously my interpretation, and since I know I'm writing this, or I'm trying to do this for a story format, it makes a lot of sense that I'm trying to fit this into a story, so don't feel like all these cards are just magically coming together. Okay, so I went and found all the cards, and now we're going to go through all of them. So the first one has to do with the ordinary world, what is going on in both of these characters' lives. Again, I'm writing for the perspective of going to be 2 characters. The first one I pulled is going to be the Page of Coins right here, if you can see that. This means that they're grounded. This is a new potential. This is almost like a view of innocence. Now, the character that's being depicted in this card is a little older. Normally, this is a younger looking person that's running off that's got their coin with them, and they're just excited about things. But because this is also an Earth card, these are 2 people that are grounded in the way that their world is established, and they're very comfortable with it. So setting the scene, so to speak. Alright, next one we have is the Call to Adventure. It's the thing that's going on. Here we have the Page of Swords. Lots of pages in this. We have the Page of Swords. This is new energy. This is a razor sharp wit. This is instigated by somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. This is not a naive kind of action that's being taken. This is something that was planned, calculated, and it's being put into action. So the next card that we have to do is refusing the call. We're kind of doing the regular hero's journey thing here. And the card I pulled up for that is Two of Pentacles. Two of Pentacles, I don't know if you can see it very well. This is the card that it's balance, it's routine, this is predictability, this is everything that we need it to be. And so what the refusal of the call is, I'm going to say for one of these characters, because it's not going to happen for the other, because the tower, right? But they're reluctant to engage in this activity because it's their routine. Like they're grounded, they're established in their world. They don't want to change it. They don't want to rock the boat. You guys see those boats in the back? They don't want to rock the boat. But it looks like this is, but yeah, so that's what's stopping them. They don't want to rock the boat. So moving forward, we have our Gandalf character coming back. It is the Queen of Cups. Now the Queen of Cups, you're gonna hear that a lot too from new people who are doing tarot card readers, or that's like their basic chant when they're doing this stuff. But the Queen of Cups is somebody who is mysterious. They're empathetic. There's a lot of water in here. Again, this is your water sign. This is, and again, I mentioned earlier that the queens are kind of like the more nurturing part of the court. So whoever this person is again, as I said with the Temperance card, is somebody who is between two worlds. They're empathetic. They have a magical part of them, and at this point, it's going to be a woman. So now we're breaking into Act 2. Like what we had the thing that was refusing the call. We found the mentor ally that's going to help us make the choice. But what is it that makes us do it? So I pulled the Ace of Swords, and the Ace of Swords usually has to do with doing the thing that needs to be done because it's the right thing to do. So the reason that this action is going to go forward is because this is the thing that needs to do. It's the truth. It's the cutting. It's just the pure thing that needs to happen. And again, that's just my interpretation of this particular card. So now the plot thickens, right? Because now we're moving on to the guardians and the gatekeepers. What's stopping the thing from what's going on? And so right after the Ace of Swords, we pull the Ace of Coins. Money card, serious money card. The thing that is stopping them is somebody who wants money, and they want it in its purest form. So I don't know who this is yet. I don't know who this is, if this is a group or anything, but whoever is trying to stop them is trying to do it for money. I don't think it's the villain. I don't think it's the bad guy. I think this is another party that's coming in and it's basically hindering what's going to happen. So we'll run with that. We'll see what happens. Oh, you know what would be cool? Pirates. So card 7, which has to do with the road and the trials, and I pull the 9 of Swords. So 9 of Swords is... This is anxiety, helplessness, this is trauma. So remember earlier when I said, oh, where is he? When I said that there was going to be a character that had endured trauma and hardship. Okay, well that's going to surface again in the story, and it's going to come in a really bad way. Like, this is going to really screw with this character, and it's going to probably hinder a lot of things that are going on in what's happening. So I'm actually kind of excited for that. So card 8 has to do with like the supreme ordeal, but of course, like, I have two main characters, and when I looked at this card I was like, this is the other character's trials and tribulation. Like, this is the thing that they need to overcome as well. And I pulled the Judgment card. The way it's depicted in this particular deck is strange for me. It might make more sense to you, but I've always perceived this card to be a facing truth, reflection, seeing things for how they are. So I want to say that this character has actually lived, I want to say in a bubble. I want to say this character's lived in a bubble. They've had a very weird idea about how things have worked, and now they are seeing things for what they really are, and they're reflecting on it and kind of growing from it. Okay, so card 9 is supposed to be the Abyss. Like, this is supposed to be like the darkest hour, right? But of course, for the darkest hour, I pull like the happiest card ever. So the 3 of Cups is supposed to be communion. It's supposed to be friendship, a tribe, whatever you want to call it. This is the card where basically you are surrounded by a good network of people. So even though I didn't inverse any of these cards, I think we're gonna have to do the inverse for the meaning of this card. And for the Abyss of what's going on, basically the support network and everything that they had going in their favor is now gone, and they have to finish the rest of this by themselves. This is another example about the way that cards are done differently. Like, I really love the art in this, but it doesn't follow the same symbology that I usually see. Okay, so anyway, before I get on a tangent, card 9 has to do with the ultimate boon, and for that I pulled the 8 of Swords. Now, as you can see, this person is blindfolded, they are surrounded by weapons, but what you can't see, and is usually in all the other cards, is that they have the ability to get out. Their feet are unbound, so that means that they are able to get out of the situation that they find themselves in, but because you can't see this person's feet, you're not able to kind of get that. And typically what that means is that if you pull this card, it means you're in a tough situation, you can get out of it, but you're not going to get out of it unscathed. So this ultimate boon is supposed to mean that they are going to be able to overcome the difficulty of being abandoned. It's going to hurt them, but they'll be able to overcome it. So that's the ultimate boon, knowing that they're going to survive. Maybe. So this is the card about, it's called the return. So they go and do a thing and they come back, and I pulled the sun. The sun is supposed to represent joy, success, and celebration, but I think in the case of this story, what I am perceiving is that the sun is shedding light on all things. So all the stuff that was kept hidden in the shadows is now going to be exposed under the truth that they bring with whatever evidence that they have. Man, this is really compelling. Yeah. This is another card where I like look at it. I'm not too sure about the kids. Yeah, usually there aren't kids in this card. This is weird. Well, okay, let me take that back. There's normally one kid that's in the card, not two. So the last card is the Master of Two Worlds. Oh, hey, check it out. Master of Two Worlds. Remember this guy? Alright, so Master of Two Worlds. And the card I pulled for that is the Four of Pentacles. This is the Protect card. Normally when you guys see cards like for the Four of Pentacles, one of these is held very possessively, like this is mine, you can't have it. But in this case, you know, it's not as prevalent. But I think given that we have the fate of two worlds and it's being protected, I think that's, yeah, that makes a lot more sense than when I was just looking at it by itself. Okay, so that day two, I have gone over all the cards that I have pulled. I have tried to explain the meaning to them to the best of my ability for my observations and interpretation of the symbolism of the cards. So I think at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and outline it and see what we come up with. Okay, so I sat down, did some thinking, I did an outline, and I figured out the gist of, well, I mean, we went over the gist of how the story was going to go, but I figured out a lot of other things that needed to go with it. You know, I figured out what the binding of the two worlds was going to be, I did the setting, I did some character fleshing out, and I'm pretty happy with this. And the one thing that I did really enjoy with doing this prompt is that I was actually able to take it and apply it to another project that I needed to do, and it really helped me out a lot there. And I sent it to the person that I'm doing it for, and they ended up really liking the idea as well. So it definitely helped me with trying to like figure out where I needed to go and how I needed to do it. Now, I know the way that I interpret the cards is different than how other people do. If you are somebody that does this as a hobby as well, or if you do it as a profession or whatever, feel free to just leave a comment about a way that you may have interpreted one of the cards that I did differently for the sake of having a conversation, kind of showing other people who may be watching the video about the different interpretations that can happen. Remember, this is just for fun, it's for entertainment. We don't have to be like super serious on this. So that brings us to the end of the video. We are bim bam boom done right now. I would like to go ahead and remind you that I have a pre-order for my book that's coming out, Queen of Swords and Silence. It's coming out on August 9th. The Kindle version is available for pre-order right now. The physical copy is coming very soon. I'm just waiting to hear the notice that it's up right now, and then you will all know if you are the type of person that likes to have a physical copy. If this is your first time seeing me and you're not sure if I know what I'm talking about when it comes to any of this writer nonsense, I actually have a newsletter, and if you sign up for it, you get access to a short story, and you can read it, see if you like my writing style, if it's up your alley. If you don't, you can unsubscribe. It won't hurt my feelings too much, but I totally get it, and I would rather you know what you're getting into versus taking kind of a blind bet. And, you know, after doing the video and doing like a little bit of reflection, I was kind of curious if you guys were interested in me doing like more tarot related videos, like again, not doing readings, just kind of like, you know, explaining them and kind of diving in deep with the different meanings of cards, mostly because one of the reasons that my book is called The Queen of Swords and Silence is because if you go to my Instagram, you'll see that I'm actually going through the process of kind of drawing like my own deck based on characters from my novel series. And that was one of the things that actually got my publisher's attention and that they really liked. So this is something that I do really enjoy doing. It is something that is invested in me, and I literally just kind of want to share that interest and that enjoyment with the rest of you. So if you think that's something that you are interested in, please leave a comment. I would be more than happy to do these kind of videos for you. But that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to having another video out for you next week.